hundreds and thousands of years ago. For example, if you look at the Quran has told us the fact that time is a relative thing 1,400 years ago, and this has been proved later on. And the Quran also tells us that at the very beginning of the time, the earth was covered with smoke and clouds. So that fact, that scientific fact, again, was told us in the Quran 1,400 years ago, long before it was scientifically proven. So Quran, as I have said, encourages scientific pursuits, and it is not in contradiction, and it cannot be in contradiction with scientific explanations. So that is a very important proof that the Quran is a great book. So the Quran always encourages us to carry on our scientific researches. Allah in the Quran always tells us that go and research and find the origin of life, find your source of life. So that is a very clear evidence that religion cannot be in contradiction with science.
What is the origin of life? No, what I'm saying, we can test the evolution and look at the empirical data and find consistency, but how do you test creationism?
Well, we can only have to look at the fossils themselves. There are fossils which date back to 300 or 400 million years of age. So we have 100 million fossils in our hands, and if we inspect just 1 million of them, that would be enough for us to prove creationism. It would be enough for us to prove that the earth was created by Allah Himself. And it is not only 1 million. We could only research and work on 10,000 or 5,000 of those fossils, and that would be sufficient for us to reach to the conclusion that creationism is the right thing.
So creationism requires faith. Also, evolution requires faith. Both require faith.
Yes, both require faith, but one of them is the real faith, the real religion, and the other is a fake one. It is the path of Satan. It's a paganic, it's a Sumerian, a primitive belief. It's something corrupted. We have to make this distinction between the two.
You mentioned that Darwinism and the theory of evolutions really galvanized or made our life very materialistic and not really big on moral and morality and all that. But when you look at the United States, where I came from, are the most, probably the biggest religious, have the biggest religious feeling, and 80% of the American people believe in creationism. However, they are the most materialistic society. The Europeans, which almost 80% do not believe in creationism, they're not as materialistic. And also in the Muslim world, where they believe in, more than 90% believe in creationism, they are also very materialistic. I mean, today I'm very grateful that you invited me during the Eid, and I went for a tour and been here for a couple of days, but you find out the mosque is empty and the shopping mall are full of people. So is materialism exclusively for those who believe in, or those have religious beliefs, do not have religious beliefs, or also materialism has something to do with globalizations and the fact that people who owns the media and owns the corporation are running the show?
Well, let me first tell you that in Europe, people who believe in Darwinism only comprise of the 20% of the whole population. The number of people who believe in Darwinism has drastically decreased after the publication of The Atlas of Creation, my book. So you can test the impact of my book in Europe. In Turkey, similarly, the population, 90% of the Turkish population do not believe in Darwinism any longer. And the Turkish society is a very religious society. And the fact that you have seen people roaming around the shopping centers doesn't necessarily mean that the Turkish society is a materialist society. They might have been needing something and they are shopping for that. And in Turkey, mosques are really full of people. And in this feast and in the previous feasts, the mosques were similarly full of people. And on Fridays you can see people praying both inside and outside the mosques on the streets. So the number of mosques which have been built in Turkey has increased too. So in Europe, Islam is the most fastly developing religion now. So materialism is being defeated and the religion of Islam is increasing all the time. So you can test this through questionnaires, through surveys which have been done by channels, by internet sites and very important newspapers. So you can have a very detailed research on that. And if you want, I can give you the data about these surveys later on.
I'm sorry to want to give the impression that the Turkish are more materialistic than, let's say, Saudi Arabia. Or I was talking about the Muslims at large. I just happen to be here in Turkey. But in Egypt, everywhere you go, even especially in the new generation, where people are just deserting mosque or deserting, and they might go on Fridays, but that's about it. But they're deserting the mosque and ending up in the shopping malls. There are more people in the shopping mall than the mosque, that's for sure. But I don't want to dwell on that. And let me bring your thoughts about combining the evolution and creationism or creation theory together. And some Muslims, you call them Muslim evolutionists, are trying to do that. And growing up back in Egypt as a youngster, I read this verses from Surah Al-Tin. Let me read it for you and tell me my interpretation, what do you think of my interpretation to it? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. والتين والزيتون والطور سنين وهذا البلد الأمين لقد خلقنا الإنسان من أحسن تقويم ثم رددناه أسفل السافلين. So God created insan, Adam and Eve, as the creation or creationism stated, and then after the violation of divine order, ate from the knowledge tree or whatever they've done, God brought them down asfal safilin. And asfal safilin in Arabic means the most minute, smallest thing. And that's what, after asfal safilin, like amoeba or whatever, that's when the evolution kicks in and then takes millions, billion years and to develop conscious and religion, what have you. So this is my understanding or my little. I'm not a scholar on anything, but I was very comfortable with that we can combine the two together. Creationism first, and then evolution kicks in after descending from heaven, as asfal safilin.
Well, when we look at Jesus Christ, there's a story which is also told in the Quran and in other biblical texts, when he takes a mud in his hands and he puts that mud into the shape of a bird, and he flows into that bird, and then the bird enlivens and starts to fly. In this story, in this example, we have no evolution at all. Moses, for example, just throws his stick onto the ground, and that stick turns into a snake. And when Moses holds that snake again, then that snake is turned into a stick again. So this example too shows us that Allah is in no need of evolution, because the bird which has been flown into the mud is a real bird. It is not an evolutionized bird. And the snake is a real snake. So these are all spontaneous creations by Allah. So in the Quran, all explanations are for that line, that is spontaneous creation. And we have no such explanation in the Quran which could encourage us to believe in such a compromise between creationism and evolution. If there had been